Hi, and welcome to Live with OAIB, a conversation where we discuss HR challenges that leaders are facing today. We use our 40 plus years of experience in HR, consulting, and executive coaching to go deep on topics that are top of mind, but often avoided. Thank you for joining us. I'm Latanya Roberts, COO, Executive Coach, and Human Capital Strategist. I'm an integrator who takes a holistic approach to turn your vision for the organization or yourself into solutions that create inclusive cultures where all not only feel, but know they belong and can thrive. My superpower has been the ability to help my clients clearly articulate their needs and goals and then break them down into actionable steps that don't overwhelm them. Tawana?
Good afternoon. My name is Tawana Bagwat. I am the CEO and Principal Consultant for OAIB. I am a visionary who believes in the power and promise of equity, and I help organizations become places where everyone has a deep sense of belonging. I cut through the background noise and coach individuals and groups, but especially leaders, to make a mindset shift, starting with them being their authentic selves, aligning with their purpose, and being rooted in their own personal power. I would say my superpower is helping people become aware of their blind spots so that they can put the oxygen mask on themselves first and then make others feel safe, heard, and inspired. So, Latanya, what are we talking about today?
Well, we all know what it's like to be or to have a friend that's been the only in the room, whether it's gender, race, religion, you name it. Being the only can be a lot of pressure for a person. So we hear about this all the time from our clients, and I'm sure you all out there can relate. Please add your comments or your questions in the chat and we'll respond in the next few days. Did you know that there's actually a term for this? It's called tokenism. So, Tawana, you write about this in your blog, Tokenism in the Workplace. Let's start by defining what tokenism actually is.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. Sometimes I refer to it as a double edged sword, but the technical term has been defined as the practice of doing something only to prevent criticism and give the appearance that people are being treated fairly. So I would say it's an attempt to appear fair, right?
Mhm.
It's policies or practice of making only a symbolic effort.
Okay. So tell me, you have any specific stories about what this may look like? Have you seen it in the past before?
Yeah, one example that comes to mind for me is such as hiring a person, right, who belongs to a minority group.
Mhm.
I also seen it play out where there's only one on the board,
Mhm.
and they talk about it from a we have a diverse board, and they speak about diversity being diversity of mind, experience, but not necessarily showing up in the form of diversity of gender for that matter,
Mhm.
or of race, where you can clearly see. But I would tell you, most times it lives as the only one
Mhm.
on the team, on the board, or speaking at a conference to
Mhm.
really truly get a check mark for having someone to represent the minority group.
Mhm. How do you see this playing out in the workplace other than you mentioned the board, sometimes a team, but tell me a little bit more about how it plays out in the workplace?
Yeah, I would say for many reasons, token people of color often face heavier scrutiny, right? Most
Mhm.
times from their coworkers, more misunderstanding and less opportunity. So,
Mhm.
one of the things that come to mind for me when we think about this is that people of color are less likely to give or receive authentic feedback because they're playing a role and or don't want to rock the boat, right?
Mhm.
So nobody ever comes out and say, you're on the team because you're black, but they don't want to really have you here. Um,
Mhm.
that's how tokenism really show up. It isn't something that you always see, but for sure, it's something that you feel.
Mm. And what do you mean it's felt? What does that mean to you?
I think I described it as fake diversity, right? It's
Mhm.
one person of color on a leadership team. And so when I say it's fake diversity, it truly is about the checkbox.
Mhm.
But I want to be super clear that when I say that, it's not because people of color have not earned the right
Mhm.
to be there. I think that is so important because I too have been the only in the room, on the board, on the team. And although I believe I have earned my right at the table, a seat,
Mhm.
I often look around and say, no one else has.
Mm. Mm. Why do you think that some people of color may be so willing to accept the role as being the only? Because that's such a difficult position to be in, and not everyone's ready for that fight.
Yeah, that is such a great question, right? Because take myself, for example, position comes up, I look around and see who else is in leadership. And I go, there's no one that look like me, right?
Mhm.
There's no women. There's no person of color. And if there is a person of color, sometimes I don't identify with them,
Uh-huh.
right? But I do believe that I have earned the seat. So there's a decision to be made. Most times we say yes, we lean in. It's an opportunity. I would tell you for me, my framing has been it's an opportunity for me to influence change. I've
Mm.
always been a change agent. I've always, gone against the status quo. And in order for you to affect change, sometimes you have to be at the table,
That's right.
but there's a struggle that comes along with that. So sometimes we think that once we get there, that we can make it better or
Mhm.
affect change. And we find that it takes us through our own personal trial, right? Of trying
Absolutely.
to pave the way, be the trailblazer. All those words are important. And I would often say that if it wasn't for people who came before me, I stand on big shoulders. But it does come with a trial. And so I often would ask myself, is it worth it?
Mhm.
Do I really want to go through this? And I can almost 90% of the time have said yes and have leaned in and have made a change. But I would say I have been in scenarios where that 10%, I was super clear, there was no changing the mind. And if
Mhm.
I didn't know it then, I knew I was a token.
Mm, that's so powerful. And so many people, a lot of the organizations that we work with, or a lot of the organizations that we're researching, they're in this position right now, right? They have one or two people representing people of color in their entire organization. When you look at the very echelon, the top of the leadership, and their next person may be one or two levels below,
Or
right?
lower.
So it's so common, and I think that while organizations are starting to wake up and see there needs to be some diversity at all levels, it's harder to understand what the impact is on the organization as a whole when you have that one person and they're seen as that token person, right? Or they're seen as a person in their mind is blazing the trail, but to many others, it's like, well, do you really mean this? Is why is this person here? Or I've even heard, oh, they're here because of affirmative action, or which was the old way, right? And now it's it's they're here because DEI is the big thing, right? But
Mhm.
let's really talk about how tokenism can really harm the organization. What's the impact of that?
Um, I mentioned that tokenism could be seen as a double-edged sword, right?
Mhm.
So we want somebody got to be the first
That's right.
to begin to pave the way. So please don't hear me discounting that. And I have had the opportunity, sometimes painstaking opportunity, to be one of the first or the only. But the flip side of how tokenism harm is underrepresented voices get drowned out
Mm-hmm.
because you're still sitting as the only, even though you're at the table or at C-suite level. And there's no one who can identify with your experience or the point of view that you're coming from. So your voice can get drowned out, right?
Mm-hmm.
More likely, it could live in the format of being interrupted in meetings, not allowing your thoughts to be shared in its complete form, less likely to use the talent or make impactful contributions because they don't feel a sense of belonging. So a person in the seat, but sometimes retreat just to survive because you tend to move in survival mode. Then there's an
Mm-hmm.
effect on the team dynamics. Retention become an issue as people look up. They're like, there's only one, meaning there's only room for one. Um, so performance is impact, the culture is impacted. There's so many ways that tokenism can harm what I believe most good intended
Mm-hmm.
people are trying to do. And no plans though to move more, create
Mm-hmm.
room for more. And as you think about that, there's another side to this because there's a conversation that's also happening in the community
Mm-hmm.
of people of color, right? Going, let me see what they're going to do for us. There's a conversation that's, I don't see a difference, and you've been there now for some time.
Mm-hmm.
They would have never put that policy in place if you were doing your job. So there's an unspoken expectation. So you're being pulled from your community. You're in a striving mode to be heard and seen, to show your gifts and talents. So you have it coming from all directions. That's harmful as a collective,
Mm-hmm.
on the individual, on the group that this person may identify with, and from the organization as a whole.
Absolutely. So we talk about the harm on the organization. I want to turn it inward and talk about what struggles that person may be having, right? We talk a lot about having to be one way at work and then we go home and we have to be another way. Right? Talk a little bit about that, what it's like when the person leaves the boundaries of their organization and they go home and everyone looks like them in many cases,
Mhm.
but they have to show up differently.
Yeah. Famous term code switching, right?
Uh-huh.
We do that quite a bit. And whether we're the only or not, we do that. But there is something to be said because I do believe that it messes with your individual psyche, right? Where you are taking on a bigger challenge. You become the representative of the group that you are identifying with. And those are heavy burdens to carry.
Mhm.
You also are balancing showing your own worth, what you bring to the table, which has
Mhm.
its own natural hurdles.
Yeah.
So I would say that that individual is under constant stress and pressure to
Mhm.
deliver and to be all to everyone, right? And then to also, to some degree, shelter your family or personal friends from what you're really going through because
Mhm.
you're seen as a hope, right? You're seen as the first, which your family and community are super proud of.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of firsts, and particularly for people of color, that we are proud of. But in today's society in 2022, are we really still at the state of being the only? How many times will we continue to relive the hurdles. There's been enough people of color who have done significant and great things
Mhm.
that there should be no question around, do people of color have what it takes to be at C-suite or to be in leadership? But at the same time, not be tasked with being the voice of speaking for everyone in their community or group.
Absolutely. And we hear that so often when we're interviewing people or coaching them, and they say, I just joined this organization. People are comfortable with me, but I was asked to join this affinity group or come to this meeting and felt like there was a spotlight on me and I was asked to speak for everyone and it's exhausting. It's like you're trying to solve the problem that you didn't create, but you have to speak for everyone and it removes your identity. It removes parts of you because there's no way that you can speak for everyone. I'm a woman. I don't speak for all women. I'm Black, but I don't speak for all Black people. And that's a very uncomfortable position to put someone in, number one. But two, I think it's more of us a communal responsibility to tackle this issue, right? It's not just on one person. We all play a part. So I really want to know what can be done about this. How do we address tokenism in an effective way that allows organizations and the people in those roles to move forward? So I'm going to list a few roles to just kind of demonstrate what this may look like in an organization, and I'd love for you to break down how each person or player plays a part in navigating tokenism. So let's start
Absolutely.
at the top, right? Because everything happens with the top and they're so influential. So, as a leader, what would you tell the leader their role is?
I would say the leader is ultimately responsible at the end of
Mhm.
the day. And I would challenge them to take a look at who is sitting at your table. What voices are influencing decisions and outcomes? And is everyone being included in this process? And what are you doing to ensure that that is the case?
Absolutely. So then we have the leaders and they're paving the way forward, but then there's the important HR person, that team,
Mhm.
those business partners, right? Who may not be the outward facing people. They're not talking to the clients, but they have so much influence on how the organization works. What would you say to those people in HR?
To my HR counterparts, this is something that, of course, is near and dear to me. I think that HR has a role around accountability, right? They are
Mhm.
responsible for creating policies and practices and procedures that has an equitable intent,
Mhm.
right? So they are looking at the written policies, practices, and procedures. And they are looking to see if this is inclusive or do we have exclusionary language? How are our leaders, managers of others, team members, staff, etc., implementing those policies on a day-to-day basis? And then the accountability pieces come in where they're setting the guardrails to some degree. They're like leaders. We've heard from the organization, whether that's through engagement surveys or having an open door policy where people are saying, here's the concerns that I've had, here's the lived
Mhm.
experiences that I have, who can support me. They are your number one ally, should be at least.
Absolutely. And so we always tell the people that we're working with, partner with HR. And it comes up in that recruiting process, right? There's always well, who's responsible? Who's accountable for making sure that we are recruiting a diverse skill set of people?
Yeah.
And no one can ever agree on this, right? So we
Mhm.
encourage your hiring managers and your team leads to go to HR who may be doing those interviews and doing the initial review of the resumes, but
Yeah.
hiring managers and team leads, you need to give them the requirements. What are you looking for? What's missing on your team? So, what would you say to the hiring managers and those team leads when we're addressing tokenism?
Yeah, so I think it's super important because at the end of the day, HR can give you a slate of candidates, but the hiring managers are selecting, right?
Mhm.
So I would challenge them the same way. Who's sitting on your team? Who voices are influencing decisions? You may have what you call a diverse team, but you're not leveraging the talent that you have there that could be or may not be people of color.
Mhm.
And it could only be one or none. We support organizations that, as we drill down into the team level, it's all white.
Mhm.
It's all white. And I would tell you that the hiring managers and some team leads are okay with that, right? And we would say that they suffer from a similar to me bias, right? Um,
Mhm.
because they have a model, an avatar in their head of they know who can get the job done because they have the same experiences that I do. So when we think about how having the only one, right?
Mhm.
Because you've got to start somewhere and
Mhm.
recognizing that once you get one on the team, you're responsible for many more to come. And I need
Mhm.
to say this before we go any further. I am not a supporter of having someone be on the team that's not qualified. I don't care
Right.
what color they are. I don't care what ethnicity they are. So let's be clear. I'm talking about all things created equal around skill set, capability, and talent. And so I then struggle with anyone telling me that a person of color does not
Mhm.
have skill set, capability, and talent,
That's
right?
right.
To deliver the work. But I would say in today's environment, that I personally would challenge and struggle with seeing a all white team.
Mhm. Or a team of any one ethnicity, right?
Absolutely, because
Because we all deal with it.
right?
Yep,
And
we all
we
do it.
encountered a team of finance where it's majority Indian, and
Mhm.
that has this, or Asian, and that gets into different stereotypes, right? That would say, my team is diverse, but what you're saying is only Asians, or pick a group,
Mhm.
can punch numbers.
Right, right, right. And it doesn't, and we're talking very surface level here when we're speaking about diversity. I mean, you obviously can pick up race or ethnicity a little bit
100%.
easier, right? But
Mhm.
when we're talking about diversity, it's educational diversity,
Yeah.
it's socioeconomic, it's sexual orientation, it's religion, it's parental status, disability, and the list goes on and
Yeah.
on. And we really encourage our clients to just look at that because there's so many things that you're missing. We had a great conversation today about personality types
Yeah.
and what that looks like, right? And being able to lean on the strengths of others to fill in where you may have a shortcoming,
Yeah.
whether it's something that you do very well, but maybe it's something that drains your energy. Right.
Mhm.
So there's so many ways to look at it. And we put the hiring managers and the team leads here together because you may be hiring externally to come into a role, but then internally, we know people are jumping from project to team and so on. So that process kind of starts all over, but the same skill sets and the same mindset still applies. In this case, you still want to make sure that you are diversifying your team and you're being inclusive and you're being equitable in that process. Right. So now we have people that are on the team, they're in the organization. What would you say is the role of the team members
I'm
in a
going to group team members. I'll say this. I think team members need to show up as being allies, supporters, bringing people in, being inclusive, being welcoming,
Mhm,
collaborating, helping in the success of,
mhm,
right? But
mhm,
I want to quickly, though, jump to other people of color. And I
uh-huh,
alluded to this earlier, but I will say it again, that there is a natural expectation to
Mhm.
be in a community of like-minded, but
Mhm.
of people of like life experiences, right?
Mhm.
That you call your community, that you call your tribe. You have an expectation, if you are the only, that you would get support, that they would be allies, that they will
Mhm.
provide you with things you need to help them open doors for you and
Mhm.
others to come behind. And I would also say that sometimes that is a challenge because people
Mhm.
in our own community sometimes have unrealistic expectations, which will have them to get disappointed. So
Mhm.
they may not show up as an ally, right? As a true supporter. And that's where the affinity groups become so critical. That is where going to support groups or creating them so that people can get, kind of behind the curtain
Mhm.
conversation around what's really the challenges that one would face as they sit as the only, or call it the token.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, right, we all have a role in this, and that does include being your own rescue,
Yeah.
right? Clearly communicating what your expectations are, right? Just as others are putting expectations on you,
On
setting your
you.
boundaries,
Mhm.
protecting yourself, and calling people in and calling people out on what it is.
Yeah.
You see something in your organization and you're like, this doesn't look right. Do you realize the perception? We tell
Mhm.
people, it doesn't just start once the person gets in the organization. People are looking at you. What is your brand? When they go on your website, who do they see? Because it starts
Absolutely.
there, right? Who are your ambassadors? We're sad when a person leaves the organization, but we're happy for them if it's because they're able to get a new opportunity, but they had a
Right.
great experience
Right.
in the organization and they become your ambassadors for bringing in new talent. Then we all know that referrals are the best way to bring a new person in. So why not leave that person at a good on a good note? Before we go, is there anything else that you want to say to the people in organizations that may be in this position right now? Right, they unintentionally created this culture of tokenism where they do have the only in many or one situation that they can think of.
Yeah, so I would go back to, it's okay to start with one,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's in the right direction. But let's also check our intention and motive behind the selection. Is
Mm-hmm.
it just for show, right? Or do you truly have intention to, one, bringing in the best people for the right job with
Mm-hmm.
the right skill set, right? And that you are truly open to it being a diverse person,
Mm-hmm.
person of color, gender, you pick it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also, what is your plan to support them? Because we start with, if we don't have a plan of support, then it truly does look like a tick box, right? It truly does feel like you don't have good intentions to see this person be successful and be able to open the door for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that that's not the case in today's time that we're in, but I recognize that it does still exist. So, knowing that, I would say those who accept the challenge, as I have and have done, that you go in eyes wide open and that you make sure you have your tribe, your community, your support, and that you're super clear to those that have accepted you into that position of your expectations. And I always said when I've taken such a role that I do not expect to be the last or the only for long, because I'm expecting that there's a commitment to see diversity live and thrive in any organization that I become a part of.
I love that you're putting it out there. Hey, I'm not the only one. I won't be in this role for long, because that does send the wrong signal.
Mhm.
And recognizing that you're going to have to take a lot in order to be in this position, but you're paving the way for someone else. Love that. So thank you again for just another great conversation on challenges that are impacting the workplace. We do this day in and day out, but it's so great to just take this opportunity and reflect on what we're hearing and some of the challenges that we're facing. We certainly do hope that it is helping you all. Please leave any takeaways, any questions that you may have. We're always looking for new topics to cover. Thank you so much all for listening to us today. We'll be back again every first and third Tuesday of the month. On the first Tuesdays, we do offer SHRM credits, because hey, HR professionals out there, if you need to get your PDCs or PDs out there, you can get those from us. Definitely check out our website. You can scan the QR code on the screen or go to www.oaib.org to see a list of our services. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.